This is the Analysis in Chains with Nathan Williams and Neal Kierans.
Welcome to Analysis in Chains. Happy almost New Year, Neal.
Hey Nathan, great to hear your sexy voice again. It's been too long.
It's been quite a while, hasn't it? Everything seems to have gone off the rails, between your hiatus because of family and my unannounced hiatus because my family grew as well. Sometimes life just gets in the way.
Big time, but I have to admit, I'm still addicted to following Bitcoin. And
have you been following it recently?
Oh yeah, between diaper changes, I would often sneak into a corner and check out the latest prices, and have a look at the whole ecosystem in general. And I think some people are still feeling some pain, but I'm like, hey, this is up nearly 100%. Like Bitcoin's up nearly 100% for the year, so it hasn't been a bad year, and I'm feeling kind of excited about 2020.
I think, honestly, when you hit 20,000, everyone will always be nostalgic for that 20,000 Bitcoin. But you're absolutely right. Like, this has been the best performing asset overall out there. Is Bitcoin. It doubled in a year. That's crazy.
Yeah,
but we're living in crypto land, right? So
yeah,
like not very much.
But like, if you put things into perspective, not many assets have gone up 100% in 2019, and not much crypto has actually gone up 100% in 2019. There have been some ICOs that have performed quite well, but I think what we're seeing is something very interesting, is that a lot of the big ICOs in 2017, well, some have gone bust, but there's still a lot out there that are finally developing products. And a lot of their prices are down because we're in this development phase, which is normal. It's no different to after the dot-com bubble, where you had Amazon and Google in 2003, 2004, off the radar, not many people realizing what they're up to because the whole euphoria is past and the bubble's burst. And we're kind of going through it right now with a lot of other altcoins. But what I noticed is that Bitcoin is getting a lot of attention. Everyone's watching very, very closely because it's up 100% year to date. I was up like at 14K at one point briefly in the middle of the year. And everyone's now wondering, okay, the halving is coming. It's coming in May, and people are disputing, is this it? Is this when Bitcoin finally goes to 100,000? Or as some people say, no, the halving is already priced in, and this is the natural price of Bitcoin. So we're going to see. 2020 could be a big year.
So I guess for those who don't know about what the halving is, every, 200,000 blocks, something like that? Every couple of years, basically, the block reward for solving a Bitcoin block is cut in half. And so what this means is that the miners, when they're going out and they're solving Bitcoin blocks and they're securing the network, they get rewarded with Bitcoins, and the number that they're rewarded with is going to be cut in half. And what that means is that there's going to be less Bitcoins in the overall system. Now, historically, when this has happened, it has always resulted in a giant price spike. The past few times it happened. And so there may be reason to believe that it would happen again. But some people would say absolutely not. People expect this. They know when it's going to happen. It's going to be, mid-end May of 2020. So we'll expect nothing to happen. Other people are saying, well, if history is any indicator, we're going to see around May Bitcoin spike. I don't know. It's anybody's guess.
Well, I have to admit, I lean on the side of a spike. Not that it will go from, say, 7,000 to 100,000 overnight. But what we see with Bitcoin is that whenever this does happen, there's like a cycle over the course of a year and a half. And during that cycle, that's when Bitcoin starts to ramp up. And it's usually, yeah, and that would mean by end of 2021 is when we hit that euphoria phase. And so many people say, no, this will be the exception. But, I find it very hard to think that we've had all of these big price spikes right after halvings. I find it very hard to see why it could not happen again. And because it's the most mature blockchain that's out there, we have to remember that we're getting very close to the end in terms of the amount of Bitcoins that will ever be issued. And I think that it's starting to dawn on people, okay, we're actually getting closer and closer to the end. We've over 18 million mined. There's 21 in total that will ever be mined. And let's face it, the first couple of million are probably like lost forever due to, yeah, because God knows how many people at the start made mistakes or lost their wallets or whatever over the years, that there's probably really only 12 million ever going to be in circulation. So I think that what we will see is, personally, I think there will be a big ramp up in price. But usually what happens is that you have a supply shock. And that would mean that it causes a bit of a price bump. It could go from like 7,000 to 10,000, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that's nearly a 50% price gain. And then that kind of snowballs into, oh, the euphoria is back. And therefore it just creates this momentum going forward. And then, we're going to see, hear more in the news and more people talk about it. But what we have to remember is that I think Bitcoin's had more publicity in the recent years than it's ever had. Like if I were to look at a soccer team, like if I look at the English Premier League, which I often do, there's a team there that's sponsored by Bitcoin, that has a Bitcoin logo on their jersey. So there's so much more knowledge out there that if people start hearing about the price spiking again, they would know where to go instantly to buy crypto. Whereas in the past, they didn't really know. They were like, oh, I know there's Bitcoin out there, and they go to these weird websites and think, oh, I don't really want to do this. This is a bit awkward. But now that there's so many exchanges out there that are a lot more frictionless, I think that it's going to be so much easier to onboard future hodlers that I think we could see a big price spike. But also we have to remember that because of Lightning Network and more development, we're unlikely to see those cloggages we saw back in 2017 as well.
This would be a good point for us to step in and remind everyone that we're two guys that don't own Lambos that are discussing this. Not financial experts, but we're observing what we can in the market and talking about it for entertainment purposes. But anyway,
yeah,
I think you're absolutely right. Every time we go through a price spike in Bitcoin, what happens? More people get interested. What happens then? More projects get started. What happens then? You get more developers hired. These developers build tools to work with Bitcoin, to work with the altcoins, to increase the ease of use, to increase the code base, to make it easier to develop better projects. This happened with the internet, and I love this comparison, blockchain to the internet and the development. It went through a number of exciting rallies and exciting price spikes of shares and that sort of thing. And each time there was a new swath of developers and a new swath of code that got built. And where we are today is because we stand on the shoulders of everyone who came before us. And I think it's going to be that way with Bitcoin as well, and with all of the other altcoins. But it'll be interesting to see, in my mind, what ends up happening with the altcoins. Because even back in 2017, people were fighting fiercely over dominance. Is it going to be Bitcoin? Is it going to be Bitcoin Cash? Is it going to be Ethereum? Is there going to be one dominating cryptocurrency that has all of the right pieces that make it the perfect one? Or are we going to see a continuation of this fight to the death? Or are we going to see that each finds their niche and sort of like a United Nations of crypto starts to emerge?
Yeah, no, I think I'm leaning more towards the whole niche side of things because, Bitcoin's evolved a lot in recent years. And when we saw the whole hard fork of Bitcoin Cash, you could sort of see there was a big ideological, split in the community. And I think the crypto communities have been splitting over time, getting into their own little bundles and clusters of ideologies, and are developing, according to the gaps they see in the market. So when we look at Bitcoin, it has become the reference point now, and because it's become the reference point and the most decentralized and the hardest one to crack, or have an attack on, it's become like this gold standard, as people would say. And then the question is, okay, what is money then? What's the money part of crypto? And I think that's why a lot of people went to Bitcoin Cash, because it's so much quicker in terms of processing. Everything is on chain. There's none of these side chains. But then their system gives a lot more power to the miners. And so everyone's gone into these different camps of what the way they see things should, develop over time. But what one narrative that has been developing in 2019 is Ethereum, and there's people are now saying ETH is money, which for me, I'm like, what the hell? That makes no sense. Like, I've never seen the Ethereum network as being any form of, money. I often seen it as oil on a big, massive computer network. But what's been happening is that we've seen the emergence of DeFi, which is decentralized finance. And what that means is we're going to see a lot more loans, collateralized loans, happening in 2020. They see a big growth compared to 2019 happening. And that would mean if you're making loans in a given crypto, well, then that kind of increases the argument that that crypto is money. No different to, say, going to a bank and asking for, a loan in $10,000. Well, then if you take the loan in that form of currency, well, then that form of currency is money. So this is what's going to be very interesting, is that Ethereum is kind of going from being this big, computer network where everything is done on Ethereum to now becoming more of a financial tool. And if that's happening, where do the games go? And we see that like EOS is trying to become like the games network. And so we've seen all these different niches emerge over time because it's becoming very evident that not one blockchain can do everything. And I think that's what's going to be very interesting is like, okay, what are these different clusters, these different camps, what's emerging? And as you say, it's going to turn into maybe United Nations of crypto.
So, what are the big things that we should be expecting for 2020, Neal? I mean, I imagine with the halving, not only are we going to see a rise in speculations, but we'll probably see a rise in new projects. And the question I have is, if that does come to pass, will we see a resurgence of the ICO market, or has that ship sailed forever?
In terms of ICOs, it's still there. And you can see in the top 100 every so often there's a new entrant that spikes. And what we're seeing is there's less garbage now because the hurdle to entry is so much higher. So if you think back to 2017, all you needed was a white paper and a website that would receive ETH, and that was it. You're good to go. But now you have to have a big marketing team, a big campaign. You have to have, people with reputation on your board so people know that you're not a fraudulent entity. So there's a lot more hurdles involved, and people are better at sniffing out fraudulent activities. So that would mean that ICOs will continue, but they're more likely to be more reliable. But it doesn't mean they're guaranteed any form of success. But what I think 2020 would be mostly about will be Bitcoin potentially spiking in price. And if it goes on a rally, you will see that when people want to cash out, not cash out, but sometimes when you want to, if it goes up 10%, some traders will want to convert their gains. They may end up putting it into the likes of Litecoin or Ethereum and other crypto out there, which relative to Bitcoin are very undervalued. So we could see a big ramp up in price for all altcoins as well, but not to the same extent as Bitcoin. And I think that would just give the whole community a bit of a oomph, a bit of a push, and make people realize actually there is something here. And I think will help people realize what are the right tactics, what are the right projects that help a crypto. But I think 2020 will be a Bitcoin story more than anything. because the altcoin stories may not come for another 5-6 years, where the Amazon of crypto emerges, for example, or the new Facebook of crypto emerges, because there's still so many social network-esque cryptos out there trying to become the Facebook, and there's still so many Amazon-esque cryptos out there trying to become that e-commerce for crypto. So we won't know for a few more years, and that's why I'm thinking it's going to be really just a Bitcoin year in 2020.
A lot has happened since we signed off the last time back in the summer. And one of the things that happened to me, I was obviously had a new baby, but I was also running MindSpider. But in November, I went to Malta Blockchain Summit. And it was interesting going to Malta Blockchain Summit because they have this enormous trade show area where everyone can show what their product, what they work on, what they're looking for investment for. There were some people still doing ICOs. It's one of these areas that doesn't go away. I don't think anyone's raising 30, 40, 50 billion right now, but they still exist. But it was funny because MindSpider, my company, got a lot of attention just because it wasn't one of the standard businesses that's out there. Everyone else was doing decentralized finance, payment gateways, exchanges, legal services for crypto. It almost felt like everyone was trying to be 2017, being service providers to everyone doing blockchain projects and crypto projects, but there weren't that many new crypto projects, that at least none that were there. The ones who were speaking were all the old crypto projects who had already raised money back during the salad days, So it'll be interesting, I think, to see if this trend changes. But it didn't feel dead, but it felt like it did feel like the middle of a winter where people were hibernating, where the ones who had gotten in or at least started projects back in 2016, 2017 were still hanging around, still huddled up, waiting for that winter to pass. And if it does turn into, in the future, a more of a Bitcoin-centric story, it'll be interesting to sort of see how long it takes for others to sort of come in and say, well, what could we do? Can we be creative again? And I think that's sort of what I was missing when I was at Malta Blockchain, was that creativity that we had seen before, of everyone coming up with these crazy ideas. And some of them were obvious scams, and but a lot of them were just really interesting applications of crypto.
Yeah, like I think that you're right in the sense that the whole creativity, it's hard when there's no euphoria. Because anything's possible when every price is going up, every idea gets sold, and that I'm sure it feels difficult for many people because many crypto projects have run into technical roadblocks, and so a lot of these big ideas, some people have realized they may not be as possible as they seemed back in 2017. So I think there's a sense of reality happening for many of these people. But I'm still optimistic, because when we look how much the internet's developed over the past 20 years, we look how much Bitcoin's developed over the last 10 years, people will get past these roadblocks eventually. And I think what will help them long term is seeing the success of Bitcoin and Ethereum and some of the other bigger players. For example, Ripple got a massive investment recently, and I think it now values the company at $10 billion, which sounds absolutely crazy. But it goes to show that there's a lot of enthusiasm out there. You just have to keep at it. A lot of the the big names in the top 10 have been at it now for such a long time, and a lot of these new ICOs, they're realizing the reality of the crypto sphere. But one thing I would be concerned about if I were to set up a company and do an ICO, like, what is your exit strategy? And I think a lot of them are realizing this, because if you were to do a startup today, in most fields, be it AI or AR, VR, you have an exit strategy. You know there's a corporation that you could sell your technology to and your customers to. But if you have a crypto project and you have your crypto and coin market cap and it's on 10 different exchanges, what's your exit strategy if there's another crypto out there that does the same thing and is better than you? Can you merge your entities? Like, what happens to your crypto coins? And I think that in a world where exit strategy is not very well defined, it it kind of means there's a cloud hanging over your head and much of the ecosystem for a lot of the time. And I think that once exit strategies get easier, it reduces the risk of crypto projects, and then maybe will release the creativity of future projects in the coming years.
Well, if you think about it, Neil, the when you've done an ICO, that is your exit in a lot of ways. And it's almost like you're doing it backwards, right? You're being publicly listed in a sense. You've got this token that is going to be traded on the secondary market. That's equivalent to doing an IPO in a lot of ways for many companies. And because there may not have been a corporation behind it, might have been a foundation. There might not be shares to sell. So if you've now gone and exited, but you still hold a certain amount of tokens, yeah, that's a whole new level of problem. Because like if you think about how startups traditionally start and exit, you start by having equity, you divide it among the shareholders, you then get investors who buy some of the equity, it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and then everyone wants to flip it. They want to flip it to a big buyer who can then give you cash or give you shares or something that's of equivalent value, and you all walk away with the profit that you've made by selling your company, by selling this equity. If the value of your system it's a decentralized system and the value of it is the tokens, if you start by doing a token sale, then you're publicly listed, and it's sort of like being the CEO or the founding member of a large publicly traded company, and you can't really sell the shares if into the open market without depressing the price. So you need to find a big buyer, and I don't think many people thought through that at the beginning, but it's very similar in style to being a publicly traded company, and I think this is a fascinating development. But one thing that I've noticed is that everyone always comments that crypto is a flipping game, right? People who did their ICOs, a lot of them got disillusioned that a lot of people didn't buy their tokens because they believed in the project and wanted to hodl forever. They bought it because they wanted to flip. But this is not a new story either, because if you get venture capital investment as in the form of an equity sale, you sell some shares of your company, VCs push you to increase your KPIs so that they can flip. And it's most of these financially motivated investors care marginally about the project. What they really care about is if the project is good enough that they could eventually flip it, make their gains, and show their board that they've met their targets. And I think that this is a foreign concept to people who start ICO projects because they believe in the decentralized future. I think it is a foreign concept to someone who started an ICO project because they wanted to make $60 million really quick back when you could. But maybe it's something that we do need to think about going into 2020, and what the new world of crypto projects is going to be is how can we incorporate financially motivated investors into our model of being sort of publicly traded from the get-go without sacrificing the project in the process.
Exactly. I think it's going to be a big challenge. And, I think you've made a very good point that many people don't realize ICO is the end game for many of these projects. And they get into the end game part so soon without having any fundamentals as a business built up. And I think that once once there's some mechanism to do mergers in crypto, I think that could be quite powerful. Because if I think back to PayPal, back in the day, PayPal, it used to be two companies. It used to have X.com, which was Elon Musk, and PayPal, which was Peter Thiel. And they end up merging and becoming this super powerhouse for payment processing back in the dot-com era. And if you can imagine that if some crypto companies could do something similar where they realize, hey, we pretty much have the same crypto or we have the same type of blockchain, just a small variation, let's get together and bring all of our resources together because you have the type of customers that suits our blockchain and vice versa. I think that when those mechanisms start to develop, we could see a big boom in crypto again because it will make stronger entities with bigger networks because you have so many people in crypto, but it's so inefficient because maybe we're all backing, like we're backing multiple crypto projects as opposed to maybe 5 or 10. And if you were to bring all of those networks together into like 10, super developed blockchain networks and systems, then you could have this, big, massive, powerful entities that could be the same valuation of Bitcoin in the future.
That's a fascinating thought. I wonder how on earth that could happen. Because, I mean, it seems to be sort of the sort of thing that would be good for whatever projects did it, right? Because we have the analogy. Two companies own half the market each. They join forces, they own the entire market, and they've expanded the market because it makes a big story. So the sum of its parts are or the merger is greater than the sum of its parts. But the thing is with crypto, the more common story is you have a split, right? You have Bitcoin, and then you have a group of miners or a group of developers who disagree with the direction it's going, and then they fork. They make a new crypto. And that, to date, has been more profitable. The people that have forked away from Bitcoin end up having an entirely new crypto out there and investors are excited because now they have twice the number of tokens, each one of them having a market that's slightly more combined than the one that was that they started with. And so then the question is not can you make it happen, because you can, right? Like it's very easy to just go to an exchange and say, well, I'll honor your crypto at my store or whatever, or I'll let you exchange your crypto for mine. The question is, how do you incentivize it? How do you make it worthwhile? And I wonder if it is possible, because you don't have a single entity making that decision. And it's sort of the downfall of being decentralized is that everyone individually is looking out for themselves. And if I'm running, for example, a Bitcoin node, it might not be worth it for me to switch over to Litecoin or to Bitcoin Cash or whatever. And there's individually, even if it might be worth it, if all of the Bitcoin nodes moved over. So I don't know. It's a fascinating thing because it's a bit like the prisoner's dilemma, right? The benefit for the system as a whole is different than the benefit for each individual member.
Yeah, well, I think this is why 2020 was going to be exciting, Nathan, because
I guess so.
Because it just, I think you highlight the fact that there's still so many issues to figure out, not just in technology terms, but in process and governance and ecosystems and networks. And I think this is why people say it's so nascent, even though Bitcoin is 10 years old. It's older than most startups out there that are worth billions of dollars. But still, crypto has a long way to go. And I think a lot of these challenges you highlighted, I don't think they've been solved. I don't think they'll be solved in 2020, but I think over the next few years, we're going to see those issues raised. But it's why I say that I think 2020 could be such a huge year for Bitcoin. It's going to suck so many people in, so many creative minds that will eventually start tackling those problems going forward.
Well, I've got a prediction for 2020, Neil. I predict that I will be a published author this year.
Oh, wow.
So there's a book coming out. I don't know its title yet, but it's being written by a professor at the University of Albany, and it's being published through Emerald Publishing. And my father and I co-wrote a chapter in this book on how blockchain can be used for tracking supply chain. And so as soon as I know more information about when it'll be out, I'll let you and everybody else know. But I'm really excited. This is my first time of being published. So.
Wow, Nathan Williams, Richard Branson, you're on the same level now. Author, entrepreneur.
Exactly.
Where did the parallels end, Nathan?
Oh well, the hair. I don't have the long hair.
And the beard.
And the beard. And the airline. I don't have the airline.
Yeah,
or
okay,
the record label. But we're getting close.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, what about you? What personally, what do you have in store in the crypto scene for 2020?
Well, for me, it's all about analyzing as much data as possible, and the thing I watch the most now is hash rate. That's become my biggest obsession because we've a lot more mining companies who have been going public, especially here in Canada. And what's very interesting is that you have this opportunity now to track how miners allocate capital and the type of decisions they make. So, for example, whenever an IPO happens, they would get a lot of capital, and that capital will usually end up going into mining equipment. So it's very interesting watching the hash rate increase when more people have IPOs. And this is interesting because in a world where price is going down for Bitcoin and other ASIC mining cryptocurrencies, it's interesting the hash rate goes up despite the fact price goes down, because that creates a lot of pressure, and you start to realize that the game of mining has changed a lot, that you really need deep pockets. And a lot of these amateur part-time miners are now getting squashed out, and these mining companies are becoming big entities. And so it's very interesting watching it evolve now that we have this public information. And I'm very curious to see how we see hash rate interact between, say, Bitcoin and Litecoin, for example. Because Litecoin had a halving in 2019, caused a mini price bump, but now it's back down to $40. So I'm very curious to see if miners will switch more to Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash post halving, because they will actually lose, if they get less Bitcoin, this could really impact things for them, and maybe this will cause a bit of a spike for other ASIC mining cryptocurrencies. So I'm watching this very carefully to see how this helps with price prediction, and also I'm watching EOS and other delegated proof of stake cryptocurrencies, because it's very hard to understand their price action. With proof of work cryptocurrency, it's much easier now, when you look at hash rate and transactions and other things like this. But with DPoS, it's anyone's guess. So I'm going to try and see if we can find some correlations to help us understand DPoS pricing in the future.
And for analysis in chains itself, I'm hoping that we will continue to put out new content and to analyze this and maybe get together. But I think that it's, like before, going to be irregular, just because family and business and everything else gets in the way. I hope that we can do this again, Neil. It's been really great catching up with you and talking crypto like the old days. Yeah.
Well, hopefully 2020 is like 2017 all over again. That's what I'm hoping for.
All right. Have a happy new year, Neil, and all the best to you and your family.
Happy New Year, Nathan, and hopefully BTC hits 100K in 2020.